y'all are here tonight because you're not happy with your health right now. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd probably all be at home or out at a restaurant with our friends. Right? Well, rest assured, you're in good company, because the fact is that most Americans end up generally unwell on a lot of medications, overweight or obese, and kind of depressed. And that's just sort of the state of our health these days. How many people think that we have a health crisis in our country? Yeah. What's your name? You're hiding.
Becky.
Becky. What kind of health problems do you see around you that are on the rise?
Well, obesity for sure. It's the one. Chronic pain, chronic fatigue.
Absolutely.
Allergy.
Absolutely. Stephanie, what other kind of problems have you noticed adults and kids alike? Anxiety, mood disorders, depression. Absolutely. Christine, what about cancer? Is that increasingly common or getting less common?
More common.
Yeah, do you know the percentage of us that will be inflicted with some type of cancer?
So it's high.
1 out of 3. It's pretty scary and awful. Autoimmune disease is going up too. Things like lupus, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, all of those things are becoming increasingly common amongst adults and kids alike. So kids are inflicted with a lot of the same things, as well as increasing rates of allergies and asthma. Stacy, do you know how common autism spectrum disorder is, for example?
I don't know how common it is, but I know it's pretty common. I know there's a spectrum, and there's a lot of people who are on the low end all the way up to high end.
Right. So now it's about 1 out of 47 kids, which is crazy, because those types of things, as well as the allergy and immune disorders that kids have, were really rare, a generation ago, when myself and those of you who are close to my age and here, when we were little, those things were not that common, so it's a big problem. Were we designed to be that way, Jonathan, do you think? Or is that what's supposed to happen to our bodies? We're supposed to have all these problems? It's not our genetics only. What is it? What's going on? You don't know? That's why you're here, right? That's why you came, so I can tell you. I'm gonna, don't worry. Quizzing y'all first. Linda, do you have any thoughts on why these types of things are happening more and more to us?
I don't know, it's kind of like the chemicals in the food and the environment.
A lot of things like that. Is our healthcare system doing a good job at addressing it, or do we maybe have a healthcare crisis too?
Yeah, I think the industry is
Treat symptoms with what? Pills, procedures, things that are trying to cover up your symptoms. Dean, what other kinds of issues do you feel like we have with our healthcare system?
I think exactly what you just mentioned, is the fact that whenever you go in to try to figure out what's going on with you, a lot of times it's just a shot in the dark. You're trying to guess based on symptoms that they're seeing, and a lot of times we do our own research on the internet. And I find myself recently telling the doctor what I think the issue may be.
Well, you could just spend more time on yourself than the doctor can spend on you, right? And that's another problem with our health care system, is how strapped for time we are. Being a provider, I'll stand up for myself a little bit. It's expensive. Healthcare is expensive, right? Our medical system is extremely expensive, and we all get into a horrible situation of not spending enough time with people. So we really have a hard time actually helping people in a meaningful way. So there's a lot of problems with that. We all know that, right? We all agree, or else you wouldn't be here. You agree we have a health crisis, a healthcare crisis. Are we just going to throw up our hands and say, dang, I sure wish it wasn't like that, right? No, we're not going to do that. We want to try and make things different. Who has kids in here? Yeah. Who has grandkids? Who used to be a kid? All of us, right? So those kinds of things motivate for me for sure. I don't want us all to just become old, sick, unhappy, depressed people on a lot of medications, and continue to pass that legacy on and on and on down to our children. I have 4 kids. It's not what I want to happen for them. I myself, grew up, my family is very loving. I love them. I don't ever blame my parents for anything I went through. It's my own responsibility, right? Once you have kids, you realize that they did the best they could, and you got to buck up and take care of yourself. But me as a kid, 30 years ago, I was the fat kid. Everybody wasn't. All kids were not obese back then, which was very emotionally trying. I have Cole, that was my best friend until 5th grade. It's kind of depressing when I think back on it. And fast forward to middle school, some really rough times. What now looking back, it's kind of like eating disorder-ish, trying to figure that out for myself, because no one crunch for breakfast every day, and bunny bread sandwiches for lunch, and, you know, lemon cakes for afternoon snack, and cake at night for dinner. It was crazy. They weren't trying to hurt us. They didn't know. Like, a lot of people now don't know how those things metabolically affect us. But I hadn't learned how to be healthy. Fast forward to medical school, and I've gotten married, and I'm trying to start my family. This is around third year of medical school. We have terrible fertility problems. My hormones are still very messed up. It was a terrible, terrible journey that I really could have prevented much earlier in my life if I had known how. And I certainly wouldn't change my family. I have 4 beautiful children, 2 adopted, 2 biologic. I wouldn't change anything about that, but I certainly would change the trauma and drama and emotional issues that surrounded all of that. So it wasn't necessary. I just didn't know how to make it better. And what really took me over the edge of knowing that I needed to change my knowledge about medicine and expand on it in a different way for people was postpartum. So we adopted our 2 kids, and 6 months later, our in vitro that we kept going over and over through miscarriage finally worked. So we went from 0 to 3 kids in 6 months. And I started my career all at the same time, and I was like, I'm supposed to be happy, right? We have those moments where, like, I got everything I wanted, and I'm supposed to be happy. But gosh, I'm exhausted, I'm depressed, I don't even want to get out of bed in the morning, I don't want to do all these things. And I was like, what do I do now? If I go to my doctor, I'm going to get put on a 6-wall. With breastfeeding, that's what we do with depressed people who are postpartum and breastfeeding. We put them on Zoloft, and I knew that I would just feel worse about myself. And so I started looking a lot more into getting well and learning how to promote health in the body. And one of my medical school colleagues had trained in functional medicine. She lives in Austin, where there's a lot of functional medicine practitioners, just like there are in California and the Northeast and the Northwest. Cleveland Clinic just started a huge functional medicine center. It's really a lot more common in progressive areas of the country. We're just sort of, stumbling along here in Baton Rouge a little bit, but that's okay. We're going to catch up. But it was really mind-opening to me, and I'm glad that I followed her advice, because it helped me learn how to help myself and promote health for myself, and really change the way my family lives our lives and how things will be for my kids. But it also helped me help my patients a lot better, because when I started practicing, I realized, again, I'm just like that. I'm prescribing a lot of procedures, a lot of pills, we're covering up symptoms, but we're not really helping people function better at a cellular level, which then helps the whole organism restore health. And that's what functional medicine is all about. So, no, we don't have to roll over and put our arms and our legs up in the sky and play dead, because we do have other options, even though we're kind of in a bad situation. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. What is it? What is all this functional medicine stuff about? And how do we really start to learn how to restore health, rather than just wait for illnesses to come our way that are inevitable? It happens to everybody if you're not trying really hard to avoid it. So you're going to learn a lot about that tonight. As you're learning, remember that knowledge is what? What do we say? Is it Rosalie? Knowledge is what?
Knowledge is power.
Power, right? Knowledge is power. But what is knowledge if you hear something really amazing and you write it down and you put it in your purse and you don't look at it for 6 months? It's useless, right? It doesn't do anything for you. So as you're learning, think about, yeah, this is great, but it's not going to do any good if I don't act on it. So we also have to be thinking about how we are going to actually take action on the things that we know are very important and critical to start to turn things around for ourselves and future and our families and all those important things. So what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about what you're missing in your healthcare, because really what we follow now is a disease care system, not a health promotion system. What are your struggles? These are some of the common reasons that people come to me that they've hit a wall with the conventional approach. They're tired of being on medicines that aren't really working for them, and they're not feeling good. Metabolic problems, thyroid disorders, or they think they know in their head something's wrong with their thyroid, and everybody keeps telling them, oh, it's normal, but there's a lot of other ways we have to look at that. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, it's an increasingly common cause of fertility. Actually, male infertility is on the rise as well. Menopause. And menopause, just like pregnancy, is a really stressful time in a woman's life. Can anyone attest to that? Yeah. Yep. Yes. I haven't gone through menopause yet, but experience with a lot of our patients, and I'm not looking forward to it. So a lot of things come to the surface, and we really have to dig deeper and help you in other ways than just by giving you a prescription and saying good luck, or saying, oh, that's just normal part of aging, I'm sorry. Live 40 more years like that, Christy, you know what I'm doing. That's not really the best way to go. Chronic fatigue, fertility problems, or just knowing that, you know, my body is not as healthy as I need it to be before I get pregnant. And I know that my health now and the environment that I provide in utero to my child is going to change his or her health forever. And being really proactive. So that's other reasons that people come in. And we're going to talk about what proactive functional wellness means and how you can take action. Before we do that, I'm going to ask you this. Why? Where do you look and how do you learn about what's healthy?
Interest.
She's really honest. I like that. So you look on the internet and you look around for different ideas, and that's a good thing to do. It's a good start to take. What about you, Stacey? Where do you look to find what's healthy? On the internet. What about you, Nicole? Internet. Yeah, and then you ask. Yeah, maybe. As of recent. What about you, Ashley?
Internet.
Yeah. So we're real smart, right? We're researching, we're consciously learning. We think we got it all together. But I'm going to argue that a lot of our actions that we take really on a more subconscious level, which actually ends up being a lot more powerful, comes from this. So what does the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry have a lot of? Letitia, that we don't all have a lot of. You know, I gave you the answer right there. So they spend billions of dollars every year training our brains from a very young age. You know, all of you have kids and grandkids. You know, you can have like the most boring show on ever that they're like not actually interested in. Commercials come in and are like, oh, are we gonna get that mop? No, baby, we don't need that mop. You know, because it's just so subconscious, and it trains us to be accepting of the status quo that these what I call conveniences, whether it be our food system, our pharmaceutical system, our medical system, lots of the ways that we live that destroy our health, but we think it's normal because we've been purposefully trained that way. That's the only reason someone would spend billions of dollars to do that. So we have to try really hard to get out of that mindset and go beyond the status quo and say, I'm not going to take that. I really want my outcome to be different. But do we tend to, Chelsea, how do we tend to act for our health? Are we proactive when it comes to health? No? When do we usually decide to take action? If ever.
Yeah, if ever. Probably, like you said, when we hit the wall.
Yeah. What are some walls people hit?
Well, for me personally, it's just going to doctor, and you just have to.
Feel frustrated with symptoms that you have? Sometimes people get to the point of having cancer, or they get diagnosed with diabetes, or they have a heart attack, or they have a terrible pregnancy complication, or a kid that gets sick. Those things sometimes motivate people to finally change, but we don't want to be that lacking of proactivity. We don't really want to wait that long, and we don't have to be, but sometimes when we know that we need to do things, it's really hard to get off our butts and find the motivation that we need to. But Ken, who loses out? Who's losing out in this picture? The dog?
No, it wasn't driving the vehicle.
The person driving the vehicle that hasn't found it in him or herself the motivation to be a little bit more proactive. They're still just kind of waiting for diseases to hit them in the face because there's all these medications out there that they think maybe can save them, or they haven't even thought about it, but their subconscious is thinking about that. So we have to think about it differently and find our motivation. What motivates you, Ken, to do something that you know you need to do but you don't really want to? If you step on a tack, are you going to move your foot? Why? Because it hurts, right? So sometimes it's pain. Some people come to me and they're like, you know, I just feel like I'm surviving my life. I'm not really living it. This is not fun. I'm driving myself out of bed every day. I'm, pushing myself to work and coming home, falling in bed, and that's about all that's happening. It's kind of a painful situation to be in. I hope that we don't have to get that far, but people do, and it's a really strong motivator. You get so frustrated, like Chelsea said, looking for answers that you finally decide to do things in a different way. Sometimes it's purpose, right? Vicki, what's your purpose in life?
To gain strength right now.
To gain physical strength. That's one of your current goals. But what's your true, God didn't put you on the earth to like build muscles. I don't think, I mean, maybe you did, you're gonna be a bodybuilder and win some championships, but what's your true purpose in life? What are you here for?
Clarity of perception.
Connecting to others, possibly impacting other people's lives. Can you fulfill your purpose in life if you are exhausted all the time and your brain doesn't work right? Can you fulfill your purpose if you have diabetes or cancer and that's all you can think about is fighting that disease that you hopefully overcome?
I've lost friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you die prematurely from something that you could have avoided, right? So that's another motivator that people have, that I see that really helps move us to decide to do something different and be proactive and think outside of the status quo box that most of our brains are stuck in. And I say us, it's me too, you know, I'm not perfect. We all constantly work through this process for ourselves every day. Sometimes it's money. Nicole, do you think it's more expensive to be well or be sick?
In the, like, I think it costs less to get to the point where you're sick, and then when you're sick, then it costs a lot to keep up with the being sick and all that.
I mean, over the course of your life, being sick is certainly more expensive, right? Because even, you know, say we have to have a heart procedure, for example, or if like my sister-in-law was diagnosed with breast cancer at 30 years old, you know, she has a 60/40 policy, which means your insurance pays 60%. Well, my gosh, that's still a whole lot of money that you're going to pay being sick. And being well is actually a lot cheaper. What's the most common reason that seniors go bankrupt? Anybody know? Medical expenses, right? And so a lot of the things that we get stuck with, we could avoid that if we put a little bit of effort and investment in ourselves and promoting wellness and hopefully not needing to pay that 40%, which is totally ridiculous. You know, they even have those policies. It's kind of a crock. I'm emotional about that because I see what she's going through recently. It's much cheaper to be well. That's why our health insurance industry is in such trouble, because so many of us are needing so many things. There's just not enough resources to go around. And sometimes it's people. You know, we all have beautiful people in our lives. These are my most beautiful people. These are my kids. They're a little bit older now, but they're still as cute. And really bad too. So a lot of women especially tell me, you know, I have just been taking care of this person and that person and this person and that person, and I just let myself go. Does that work, Linda? Is that a good idea? So did anyone ever tell you when you were younger you can only love others as much as you love yourself? Did you remember saying that to you? Yeah. And it's true, and the same thing applies to your health. It's really hard to take care of other people and be present to other people when you haven't first addressed yourself. And people depend on us, you know. My kids depend on me, your kids depend on you, your grandchildren depend on you, people you love depend on you to not be stricken with preventable things and just sort of let your life go and not be able to be present to them and you know, be connected to them because you feel so bad all the time. Too, in my area of work, because primarily, first I'm an OBGYN, is what's happening to everybody else's kids too. I'm obsessed with this, really. Ashley, hello. Good to see you. I've known Ashley for a long time. What does this say?
Want me to read it?
I do.
Oh, okay. It's the first generation of kids to have a shorter lifespan than the preceding.
So that's our kids.
Yeah.
That's our kids. Yeah, my kids, your kids. This statement came from the World Health Organization. Josie. Do you think World Health Organization is a quack or a fringe organization? Do you know what the World Health Organization is? Not really. Does anybody know what World Health Organization is? Do you think they're quacks?
No.
Are they fringe? Are they some random conspiracy theorist people on the internet? No, they're not.
There's a lot of global policy.
So exactly, and this is what they said. Why? As Time Magazine so eloquently shows us, it's because of the chemicals in our environment, the foods that we give them, and all these crazy medications that we unnecessarily put them on. And we do the same thing to grown-ups too. So this is part of the fight that we're in, and part of the fight that we have to change, and we can. We just have to really learn how to do it. We have to know as young moms who are still having babies that our children's health starts in the womb It starts with our health before we actually get pregnant. So you gotta start being proactive then. And you have to remain proactive about your health until you're done, until God decides to pluck you up and have you finish. You don't get to stop. And that's how you stay healthy, unlike these people, right? When you get older and have less chances. Obviously, we all get sick sometimes. My sister-in-law that I'm talking about actually has really good health. They just happen to have horrible genetics in their family that she wasn't able to overcome, but she's going to. She's gonna fight through this. But we've got to be proactive all the way. I have people that come in who are in their 70s, and they've been doing basically okay, but they're still active, and they're like, you know what? I don't want to turn up into a crumpled 95-year-old. I still have 25 more good years to go. I need to know how to continue to be as well as I can be and make sure I'm having everything addressed in my health that I need to and help them with that. So what are some of the negative external stressors that we deal with? And when you think about stress, what comes to mind?
My job.
Your job, yeah. Kristen, what about you?
Balancing family and work.
Right? What about you, Andrea?
Money.
Money. So all of these things you've listed out are really important. That kind of falls into the category of emotional stressors. And for the most part, when people talk about these things, and myself included, you know, a lot of kids, a lot of young kids, you know, pretty high demand job, and I'm delivering babies all the time, not sleeping enough, and whatever. We just kind of expect that of ourselves, right? Like, that's just normal. That's what we're supposed to be able to do. And when we're Southern women, we're supposed to be able to do it with a smile on our faces and never be grumpy or mean to anybody. I always love it when people come in and like, I think I need an antidepressant. I'm just snappy. And I'm like, well, tell me what's going on. I'm like, well, gosh, I would be way snappier than that. I think that you're pretty normal. But emotional stress it's really important because we constantly live at this heightened, I can describe it as adrenaline state, which really has profound impacts on all of your other hormones in your body that are really important. It changes things, your hormonal milieu, I'll call it. It creates inflammation in the body. It messes up your insulin control. So it has a really big cascade of downstream events that we forget about. You know, there was a recent study that came out that said chronic sleep deprivation under 7 hours at night was just as bad as smoking. And I was like, I guess I'll start smoking. No, that's not what I decided to do. I set a rule that we had to go to bed at 10 and wake up at 5, and sometimes we stick to that after I read that study, because we're constantly improving ourselves, right? But it's important. There's a reason that cultures throughout history have, you know, focused on meditation, and a lot of us pray to connect to God, but it also is a profound de-stressor, you know, when we do it in the right way. Tai Chi, you know, all sorts of things, and we just, in our American culture, don't value that anymore. Sometimes it's physical stressors. So a lot of people have premature degeneration of the body for widespread nutrient deficiencies, inactivity. We degrade a lot faster than we should. That creates stress on the body. Also, surgery is a really, really big one. Do you think we do a lot of surgery or a little bit of surgery? A lot of surgery, right? How many women do you think by menopause age have had a hysterectomy? Half. She's exactly right. Half. Is that expected? Is that, you think, perfectly appropriate that half of us have our uterus cut out? No, not really. You know, it's a little bit intense. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, we get fibroids and polyps and heavy bleeding, endometriosis, and pain because our hormone stuff is messed up, our hormone systems, our inflammatory systems, and we can cut out that organ and sort of solve that bleeding and pain problem, kind of, but we haven't fixed the hormone problem, and those hormones are still affecting the breast in a negative way, still affecting your brain in a negative way, and we haven't really solved the problem. So why do we do that? Well, in the short term, it's easier, and in our country, we like quick fixes, right? We all do. It's our fast food society. And also, as a provider, my incentives are all in the wrong place. So I can spend 20 minutes having someone come into me and have heavy bleeding, and I do an ultrasound and they have fibroids, and say, okay, well, let's schedule a surgery, and, you know, I do a surgery, it takes me about an hour, I get paid $1,500, something like that. I don't pay attention that closely to the reimbursements that we get. Or I can spend hours talking to you and convincing you that truly we don't need this quick fix. What we really need to do is change what's happening hormonally, inflammatory wise. We'll meet with you repetitively over months. We'll truly solve the problem, and your insurance company's gonna pay me like $50. You know, so what do? You don't do it on purpose, but in your head you do what you think people want and what pays you enough to keep your doors open. So again, it's a system problem, but we gotta be smart enough to think our way out of that situation, because it's not a good thing. And lastly, chemical stressors. So these come from a lot of places, and to me, one of the most important things that are going on. Again, World Health Organization gives us a lot of great information. In 2012, they put out a report that told us hormonally disruptive chemicals, which include a lot of things, pesticides, heavy metals in the environment, things in our plastics, just to name a few. There's a lot more out there, things in our personal care products, disrupt our normal hormone systems and are a really big leading contribution and cause of many etiology to increasing hormonally dependent cancers like breast and prostate cancer, to a lot of our metabolic issues that we have going on, to the rise in infertility, in particular male infertility across the world, not just here, it's in all countries across the world. Childhood disorders like behavioral problems, even contributing to autism and some of the younger metabolic problems that we see. There's so many people coming in with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, at 17, 18, 21, who are not obese. It used to just be only overweight people, but now it's come down to the influence of hormonally disruptive chemicals in the environment. That is not something I ever really come across learning in my regular medical training. The only time I've seen it mentioned is a couple of months ago. The president of ACOG, ACOG stands for American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, wrote a letter to our Congress people and senators in Washington pleading for chemical reform. I think they sent it out all of us to show us, hey, you do care and you're doing something. Pleading for chemical reform because these things are messing up our pregnancies and screwing up our kids, screwing up babies, and increasing all kinds of pregnancy complication rates. But ACOG doesn't have the answers, and that's where functional medicine comes in, because we help teach people about this. You can't make these things go away. Even if we stop putting stuff into the environment, it's still there for a very, very, very long time. You have to learn how to avoid what you can, how to mitigate the impact on your body, how to detoxify your own toxic body burden. We all have one that we are born into the world with, and just keeps rising as we get older and older. So we really focus on that because it's super important. Food's also important, of course, right? Down here, no one wants to talk about that because we just love our food and our tailgating and our purple bowls and all of that. But what did Hippocrates tell us? Well, first, who is Hippocrates? Missy Lane. I call her Missy Lane because she's my friend's mom. I always call her Missy Lane. What did he tell? Who is he?
He was actually the father of medicine.
Yeah. So he's the father of medicine, right? And one thing, well, he tells us first, as physicians, when we take our Hippocratic oath when we graduate from medical school, is first, do no harm to thy patients. And we forget that a lot of times, unfortunately. He also taught us that what food but then medicine, and medicine be thy food. And gosh, who does that anymore, right? When we think about food, even if we're trying to be healthy, we're thinking about fat grams and how many calories are in that, and whatever those goofy things we think about. The functional approach to nutrition is totally different. It is a lot more involved with how does the phytochemicals and the antioxidants and the symphony of nutrients that are in whole foods affect your genetic expression, turn genes on and off, beneficial ones on, negative ones off. How does it affect and help orchestrate the growth of good bacteria in your body? How do you prevent disease? How do you help change those things that are happening? So it is truly our medicine. in a lot of ways. It's not everything, but it's part of it and something that we absolutely can't ignore. But most people don't know that because the food industry certainly doesn't teach us that. You know, there's all kinds of neuroexcitatory chemicals in our food that are highly addictive. And I think our biggest addiction is food, not opiates. Opiates are right behind it. And our medical system doesn't really teach us that either because they're not really paying attention to each other in the right way. But you guys are going to be smarter than that. So, Chris, when you look at this plant, what do you think it needs to look not so shabby? Nutrients? What else would you give it?
She doesn't do this at home.
Okay, it's a liquid. What else would you give it?
Oh, yeah, water.
Water. Do you think it should be in a dark room by itself, or where should it be? Oh, there.
It's got a bottle of water under it, so it might have too much.
Yeah, or maybe someone just tried to water it and they missed. They were very sloppy. So if you give it nutrients and maybe sun, this plant likes sun, by the way. It's not a dark loving plant. If you give it some nutrients and some water and some sunlight, what's gonna happen?
It should grow.
It should perk up. Probably it's gonna look better and turn around a little bit, right? Do you do any work on your car? Might you ever change the
Yeah.
oil? You do? Okay. Didn't think about that a little bit. Just picking on you. So you're putting some oil in your car and you accidentally spill some in the plant. A few days later, is it gonna look good or not so good? No. Right. And so then what would you try to do to save the plant?
Probably would buy another one.
You would buy Nicole, do you have any family members that you love that have passed away in the past? Yes. Okay. Who might one be? Your grandmother?
His dad actually, like 66.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
Okay, just for a moment, pretend that your dad gave you that plant. You're not gonna go buy a new one, right? It's really important to you. It's something that you wanna save. So you're probably gonna pull it out of its dirt, get the toxicity off, give it some new soil, and nurture it because you care about it. It's important to you. It's from someone that you love who's not with you anymore, right? But you're gonna do all those things. Well, in life, whenever we go and see our doctors and we are very droopy, like me, postpartum, with my 3 kids and my new job and never sleeping, having postpartum depression that I never wanted to admit to myself or anybody else until it was way over for years. If I go in very, very droopy like this, are they gonna give me love and nutrients and detoxification? No, I'm gonna get Zoloft, right? We wouldn't do it to a plant, but we're gonna do it to the human body and forget about all of those other important things that really should be coming first. And that, on a very base level, is the beginning of what functional medicine is all about. It's restoring what the body needs on a cellular level to function correctly. 80% of us are extremely nutrient deficient. We may be overweight and obese, we may be over-caloried, but we are extremely undernourished. And the enzymes in your cells, your mitochondria that make energy, don't function like that. They simply don't. We miss the boat a lot. I've told you we all have this toxic body burden that interferes with our ability to be able to function correctly. Again, it messes with our enzymes. Enzymes are little things that in all of our cells that like make work happen. You know, replicate your DNA, make proteins that you need to rebuild tissues, all of that. So when you have a lot of toxicity going on, of things you've been exposed to that have kind of gotten lodged into you that your body couldn't get rid of very well, it interferes with your ability to function. So rather than just prescribing medicine, and I am not against medication, for those of you who are my patients, probably prescribed you some medication if you needed it. It just shouldn't be the only thing that we do, or like the automatic knee-jerk thing that we do. It may be part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. Because, Dean, I'll ask you this. If you get in your car in the morning and you turn it on to go to work and the fixed engine light's on, what are you going to do? You're going to bring it to the shop, right? And you expect them to fix it and you pick it up. In the evening it's off, and the next morning you get in and it's on again. What are you going to do? Bring it to the shop and you're going to tell them it's doing the same thing. Did you fix it? I'm sorry. You get it and it's off. The third morning you get up and it's on again. What are you going to do? And you would Are you just turning off the stinking light? Someone, a few weeks ago called it the idiot light. I love that. I'd never heard that before. I mean, I really like that. I'm gonna use that, the idiot light. So, you know, maybe that person was being lazy and just turning off the idiot light instead of actually fixing what's under the hood. So if that keeps happening, what's gonna happen to your car? It's gonna die, right? You can get a new car. It's kind of annoying and expensive, but you can get a new car. So if that happens with your body, for example, Stephanie had a baby and she had, we're just talking hypothetically. If Stephanie had a baby, you know, I delivered 5 babies yesterday. I'm in baby mode right now. And 2 of them are named Grace, and that must be a very popular name right now. If you had a baby and during your pregnancy you developed high blood pressure and diabetes in pregnancy, which is extremely common, I'll give you some medicine and you're going to have your baby, and probably 6 weeks later it'll be gone, you know, because all the hormone stuff kind of got back to normal. And you're like, oh great, that went away. Well, actually pregnancy is a window into future health. It didn't really go away. There's a problem there. So maybe 6, 8 years later or sooner, you may have prediabetes, insulin resistance, and so then you're going to get put on some metformin. And then maybe 6 years later, you're going to have some high blood pressure, you're going to get put on some more medicine. And then maybe, because you have hormone issues going on, 8 years later, you're going to be one of 8 women who are diagnosed with breast cancer. That sounds terrible. Well, that's really, really common. Because all we ever did was turn off the idiot lights by giving you those things. We never actually helped you fix the problem that was going on. And we can buy a new car, even though it's expensive, but we can't get a new body. So we have to start thinking about what are all the signs our bodies are giving us that we're absolutely missing that are so important. That's the fun stuff we're going to talk about now. Stuff like the toilet. So, anybody in here have bloating, gas, abdominal distension, diarrhea, constipation, irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel, indigestion? Anybody? Yeah, right? Well, it's very common. So, gosh, darn it, that's a problem. Because to us, in functional medicine, what we know to be true with that fact is that your GI system, and it was never my favorite system in medical school, so I was bummed to find out I had to learn so much about it, is actually one of the most important systems we have. Your intestinal lining is actually outside of your body. So when I say your gut, I'm going to be using that term. It's everything from your mouth to your booty, where you start eating and where your food comes out. It's outside of your body. It's a barrier that is supposed to be able to effectively absorb all of the nutrients that you need. And I just said about 80% of us are super nutrient deficient, so we know there's a problem there. And it's a huge way that we get rid of toxins in our body. And a lot of people have a very unhealthy gut. So if you have any of those symptoms I just listed off, do you think you're doing those 2 super important things very well? Probably not. Bummer, right? Kind of frustrating. So if you had holes all over your skin, you would think that was a problem. That would be you. You would run to the emergency room. I have holes all over my skin. Help me, doctor. Right? Well, the same thing happens in our gut, and it makes it not work very well. It also causes a problem for our immune system. About 60 to 80% of our immune system surrounds our gut. So when we have holes all in our gut and it's not protecting us, just like if we had holes all over our skin, it's dramatically overexciting and affecting the immune system in very negative ways. It's constantly seeing things that it shouldn't see. And that's the root cause of a lot of autoimmunity problems that we have. Do you know what autoimmunity means?
She does, but.
Yeah, what is it?
Basically, kind of when your body is attacking its own immune system, like lupus or foot arthritis.
Exactly. So your immune system is supposed to protect you from invaders, but when it gets overexposed to all of these things from holes in our gut, we call it leaky gut in functional medicine, it kind of freaks out and forgets about what it's supposed to be doing and actually starts attacking your own organs, which is not good. We're going to talk more about that later. The other thing about your intestines that's so important is, I've said your name so many times, I'm sorry, Vicki. If you have to go and take a big test or, you know, give a presentation or something really big, ever like give you kind of a nervous stomach? Does that happen to you guys?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We call that the gut-brain axis. There's a connection between what's happening in your brain with your neurotransmitters or your brain chemicals and what's happening in your gut. Do you think that's a one-way street or a two-way street?
I don't know what a two-way
Does
street would be.
two-way street meaning it's bidirectional, goes both ways, and
Oh,
both,
yeah.
or does it just go down?
No,
Goes both ways. So for a lot of people who have mood issues, anxiety, depression, it's really connected to inflammation in the gut. I have one patient who has celiac, who, when she has bad flares, her OCD and depression is like ridiculous. When she has her celiac under control, the inflammation is down, she doesn't have those problems. It's very, very connected. So we miss a boat when we forget about that with all kinds of different disorders. We have to really focus on the gut. It's super important. And so when you ignore those symptoms, you're ignoring, your idiot bites. Your body's trying to tell you something. Also, the microbiome is very important. Becky, have you ever heard this term before? The microbiome. Have y'all heard of the Human Genome Project? So whenever we were going through this, and it's been a little while now, the Human Genome Project, they realized that a lot, they still don't know how much, estimated anywhere between 50 and 90% of the DNA they were coming across wasn't actually human DNA. It was micro DNA, bacteria, viral DNA. So what we've learned over the last almost decade, really, it's still a huge burgeoning area of research, is that we are hugely affected in our genetic expression from the microbes we harbor. And we've evolved with these microbes over forever, since human, I don't know how long the human race has been evolving. Anybody a science person to know that's been a long, long time, a long perfecting process, right? Unfortunately, we have become super good at totally screwing up our microbiome in the last century. Chelsea, how do you think we screw up our microbiome? How do we kill the bugs that are good for us? What might we take too much of? Antibiotics, right? And there's something else. Allison, what do a lot of people do whenever you kind of have a sinus infection and it's 8 o'clock at night and you can't go to sleep and you're like freaking out about what you have to do the rest of the week? Where might you go in the evening for help?
Urgent care.
You might go to urgent care.
I was gonna say wine, but that's not the right answer.
Allison goes to her wine refrigerator. That's probably better.
Urgent care.
You're actually advanced.
Urgent care was bad, so I'll take the wine.
Much better. But a lot of people kind of go to urgent care and they get an antibiotic and a steroid shot. Both of those things are really bad for our microbiome. A lot of the chemicals in our food are bad for our microbiome. Is anybody in here going to have a baby soon? Okay. Do you hope to have your baby by cesarean or vaginally? Vaginally. Vaginally, right? So, unfortunately, and some C-sections are necessary and life-saving, or very, very important interventions that we have. Unfortunately, we end up doing a little bit too many of them. I think nationally the rate right now is about 35%. So that messes up kids' microbiome a little bit too, because instead of bathing them with healthy microbes when they're born, they come out the belly and get exposed to surgical room microbiome, because babies are born with a sterile gut, and they have to be seeded from mom. Also, when mom doesn't have a great microbiome, we're not seeding our babies. So I'm telling my OB patients, I know that you're like really thinking about the color the wall is going to be and like what you might register for. And yeah, that's super fun and it's important. And we want to have the right bumpers so that they don't like smother, or no bumpers really is anywhere. In bed, but whatever blankets we're not supposed to have. But you should also be thinking about your microbiome. And that's a big thing we try to teach people about through their pregnancy, so that our babies get bathed in the right things when they're born. I personally was born, my mom, love her, don't blame her, love her to death. She had gestational diabetes. I was a third of 4, born by C-section, weighing in at like 10.5 pounds. I still struggle every time I do my microbe testing. It's not right yet. It takes a lot of work for me to keep it, because I didn't start out with the right one. The base is set by the time we're 2 years old. And vaginal birth and breastfeeding are the best things that we can do for our kids to get them started out right in that regard, and not enough of that happens, unfortunately. Sometimes we can. Sometimes C-section is the right answer, formula is the right answer, but we have to try a little bit harder. very, very important. And we look at that in functional testing to help people understand, because it comes into play with a lot of illnesses. And people, it's a big aha moment that people have when they start to understand that gut function and what's happening with their microbes. Feeling tired and sluggish is another big warning symptom. Depression, having a lot of mood swings all the time, feeling nervous and emotional all the time, not sleeping. It's not just that we need some Ambien or some trazodone. It's that there's something biochemically wrong going in the body, hormonally wrong, that's begging you for help to figure it out and fix it so it doesn't keep causing you problems. Having chronic headaches that people live with, it's crazy. Brain fog, not being able to concentrate or sleep right. Missing libido, so many women deal with this. Something's wrong, something's not right in the body. Our sick kids, I call this another symptom of our poor health that's begging for attention. Weight gain. Weight gain isn't just about, oh, I don't look the way that I want to look in my bathing suit. Something's wrong underneath the hood that we really need to pay attention to. It's not just trying to diet and exercise. That's important. Of course, it's part of the big picture, but it's not all of it. A lot of it's hormonally related, and these are some of the big ways. So, Christine, where do you think we get exposed to extra estrogen, too much estrogen from the environment?
Too much soy products.
Yeah, a lot of GMO, soy, and everything we eat can be estrogenic. That's a really good example. Stephanie, what do you think is another example? Some synthetic things, synthetic hormones and birth control. A little bit of that comes into play. A lot of our plastics are, they're trying to get BPA out, bisphenol A, but it's already all over the place. It's ubiquitous in the environment. BPA actually was made from a synthetic estrogen. And we didn't think that was going to cause a problem later with people's health. So we get exposed to lots of that in the environment, and it makes you pull weight, and it's a detoxification issue. If your body's not detoxifying that very well, it gets stuck in you and messes up your hormones. Oops, sorry. The adrenal gland, so that's the gland that really controls our stress response system. And we talked about earlier how stressed out we all are, all the emotional stressors and things. It keeps us on high alert. When your body thinks it's in a constant state of crisis, it's not really going to want you to burn energy. But that's a hormone problem, and it's messing up other things in your body, not just making you hold on to weight. Thyroid. A lot of people have what we call subclinical, that's the conventional term for it, subclinical hypothyroidism, where your labs are basically normal by standard evaluation, but you don't feel right. You know something is wrong. It's because your thyroid is extremely sensitive to nutritional deficiencies and how it can convert and work, and extremely sensitive to different environmental toxicity. So that's where a lot of people get into trouble with that. As well as insulin resistance is another big one. Insulin is a hormone that tells our bodies to, insulin is a hormone that tells our bodies how to use the energy and sugar that we take in. It pushes it from the bloodstream, where it's been absorbed in your gut, into each individual cell. Well, when those cells are resistant, the inside of the cell is telling the brain, I am starving here. I have no energy, but it's all floating around in you. It's there. It's just not getting to the right place. That makes you feel like this. It makes you feel constantly tired and hungry. Your body still thinks it's starving, so you can't burn energy. It's when people have a bad metabolism, this is usually what's going on. So the body keeps making more and more and more insulin, trying to overcome this resistance, and it creates other hormonal imbalances, PCOS, fertility problems, messes up your cholesterol. So you got to know about this and be able to fix it in a meaningful way, which involves more than just taking metformin. I'm not against metformin, I'll prescribe it when needed, but there's a lot more steps that have to go into it. With thyroid, the big piece of the puzzle that gets missed with a lot of people is active T3. So our thyroid gland makes T4. Most people who have low thyroid for one reason or another are taking Synthroid or some derivative of that, which is T4. What we miss is that we have to be able to convert that effectively to active T3 to be able to do these activities effectively in our body, control our temperature, have good metabolism, have our brain function appropriately without chronic fatigue and brain fog. Is a lot of the brain fog people talk about ends up being low T3. And energy. Well, in order to be able to effectively convert that, we have to have good, healthy gut function and liver function, which we just talked about. We get too toxic. Our liver is trying to detoxify all this stuff all the time. It's overworking. and our guts are very unhealthy. So we end up not making the T3, and that's why a lot of people miss the boat with thyroid, and something that we look at very closely. Another thing with thyroid is a lot of it's actually an autoimmune issue. It actually is starting with the immune system, not with the thyroid gland itself, which is very, very important. Because if you have one autoimmune disorder, there's about a 50% chance that you're going to develop another autoimmune disorder. We said, Josie, that your immune system is supposed to do what? What does it normally do when it's working right?
Function,
Function to do what?
to make insulin.
No, your immune system. Immune cells. It functions to fight invaders, to keep you from getting sick.
Right.
From like the flu or strep throat or whatever it is. That's what it's supposed to do. So if your immune system starts turning on your own body, and that's really screwed up. That's not normal, right? It's kind of scary. It's like you have an inside thing attacking you. So that's pretty scary. If it's that confused about its purpose for you, is it gonna automatically know to stop at your thyroid gland? Or might it be so confused it may attack your nerve cells and lead to MS, or attack your joint cells, your cartilage and other things in your joints, and cause rheumatoid arthritis? There's a good chance that's gonna happen. So rather than just not even know that you have autoimmune thyroid, which most endocrinologists will tell you doesn't matter, they still say that in this town. I can't tell you how often I come across that. You're not addressing the true problem. It's the immune system. And this happened to my husband. His name is Brian. He, after, when was it? Sandy was a baby. Sandy's 4. No, I'm sorry. Benjamin was a baby. He's 7. Somebody was a baby. I can't remember. It was a while ago. He tore up his knee playing soccer, wasn't warming up correctly. I really got mad at him for that. And 6 months after his ACL repair, he is just really in the dumps. And I was like, he was acting like me, postpartum depressed. What is wrong with you? You have to take care of our kids. He was a stay-at-home parent. You got to go to the doctor. You're not acting right. So he finally went, and he had low thyroid. His thyroid function is terrible. His TSH was 50. If anybody knows, that's really bad. And so his doctor put him on Synthroid, and I was like, okay. I said, well, let me see your work. Let me see your labs. So he pulls him up from the portal. I was like, oh, I'm not really happy. I don't think they evaluated everything they need to. And I called his doctor, and I was like, can you please run some antibodies and some other hormone things on him that I thought were important? And his doctor says, Betsy, sort of condescendingly to me, that's not the standard of care. You don't really need to do that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you're fired. You're not our doctor anymore. So we went to his partner, who I was surprised even saw us, and he agreed and ran the labs, and my husband had Hashimoto's. He had autoimmune thyroid problems and some other subtle changes. And I was like, oh, I knew I was right. I figured something else was going on. It's really prevalent in his family. I told y'all they have all these wacky genetic things going on. And so we go back to the second doctor, and I was like, I figured these things were going on here. What are your recommendations? He said, you don't change anything. You just still need to take the Synthroid. And I was like, oh, well, you don't really know what you're talking about either, from an immune perspective. And so we went to another doctor. Really, we just kind of taken it into our own hands, like a lot of people do, and they get frustrated. And at that point, I had learned enough functional medicine to know gut health is important. How do we start working on autoimmunity? I wasn't going to just wait around and have the caretaker of my children, and I love him too for himself, have all these other problems and not even try to do something different about it, right? So it's really important to know what's happening with your immune system. Another thing a lot of people come to us for is hormones. They don't know exactly what's going on or what they're even trying to say. They're just like, my hormones are screwed up. Please help me, because I feel like this, or I feel like this.